Mark chapter 5, and I'm going to start reading at verse 21, but we're not going to the end of the whole chunk because I'm not actually talking about Jairus and his daughter, but about something that happened in between. So Mark chapter 5 and verse 21. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered round him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue rulers named Jairus came there. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I'll be healed." Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched my clothes?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." And if you want to know what happened to Jairus' daughter and don't already, just read on the next little bit and you'll find out. But this is another one in that series we've been doing about questions Jesus asked. And did anybody spot the question? Who touched my clothes? So here we have an incident where we have two people who are actually in great distress and fear. Jairus, the synagogue leader, and this nameless woman who creeps up in the crowd. Both of them are in distress and fear, but both of them somehow have faith that Jesus could be the answer to their problem. They've obviously heard and seen the sort of stuff he's been doing up till now. And here they are in desperate need. One man who, although he's quite an important person, who might be a little reluctant to be identified with this new upstart, but his 12-year-old daughter's dying, and frankly, any port in a storm, isn't it? If Jesus could heal her, so he's desperate, he's going to her. He's going to him and asking for him to come and help. So off they all go, and, well, you know what it's like if you're in a crowd. It's very difficult to move fast, especially if you want to try and push your way through a crowd. It is very difficult. However, we have someone else who was really desperate that maybe Jesus could help her. And this is a kind of one of these sandwiches you find in Mark sometimes, where in the middle of one story you get another one, but the two are actually very much linked with a very common theme in them. So on the one hand, we've got fear, anxiety, worry, a little glimpse of faith, and desperate need. See, that little girl of Jairus's was 12 years old. This woman, for the entire lifetime of that girl, has been suffering with an internal bleeding and a bleeding discharge. And she's spent every penny she has on every doctor she can find and everybody who's got any hope of a cure to see if she could get some help. And the result has been zilch. In fact, worse than zilch. She's even got worse. Sometimes, you know, in attempts to help somebody, you actually cause them a lot more damage. And here is this poor woman, utterly miserable for 12 years. And the trouble is, obviously she would be very weak and drained, because I'm guessing that if you've been bleeding constantly for 12 years, you're not going to be the most energetic person in your circle. And obviously she's been in sort of pain, distress, all the rest of it. But you see, there's more to it than that. If you're a first century Jewish lady, you see, for a woman, once a month, she was regarded as unclean. Every bed she lay on, everything she sat on, anything that touched her, anybody who touched her or any of those things was immediately ritually unclean. They couldn't go into the temple. They had to go through cleansing rituals in order to go there. If you have a discharge that goes on and on and on and never stops, it's quite clearly explained in Leviticus 15 that actually that means that monthly situation is your regular situation as far as your ritual purity goes. You are unclean, and anybody who touches you is unclean, and anything you've touched becomes unclean. Can you imagine what that means to your family and social life, and your standing in a community? To be permanently, keep away. In fact, you have a responsibility not to go into public places. And if it's essential that you do, you must warn everybody, keep away, I'm unclean. And here's this woman who's had 12 years of this. Can you imagine what she felt like emotionally on the inside? And then here's Jesus. Maybe he could help. But how do you get near him? There's crowds all around him everywhere he goes. And then she has this plan. Maybe if I just sneak up behind in the crowd, I'll keep very low, and then there's just a fringe on the edge of his garment. If I just touch that, maybe I can be healed. So I'll slip up and I'll sneak away unnoticed, and then I can't be any worse off, can I? And so that's what she does. And immediately she feels the blood stop. She feels something has changed. And suddenly, wow, I think I've actually been healed. Now, you notice she hasn't had time to sort of pop to the equivalent of the ladies to check. But she knows something has changed in here. I'm different. And I expect she was trying to slip away, partly just to double check. But then Jesus throws the curveball. Who touched my clothes? Oh, whoops. The last thing she wants to do is for anybody to know what's happened here. This would be really embarrassing. And maybe she'll be in big trouble. And his disciples are saying, well, come on. Hundreds of people must have been touching your clothes. Have you seen this press and throng around you? This is the sort of place where, you're going to get touched quite unintentionally by loads of people. But you see, Jesus knew that it wasn't just any touch, because it tells us that he felt power go out from him. It gives us just a little hint. When Jesus is out there healing people, something is being taken from him every time. Can you imagine how drained he must have felt at the end of the day? But he felt something happened there. That wasn't just somebody who happened to bump into me. So she's aware, I'm going to have to own up, because he's not giving up. He's looking around. But you wonder, well, why? Why does he ask this question? He knows somebody's touched him. He knows that somebody somewhere has been healed. Well, that's fine. Why does he decide to call her into the public like this, to embarrass her, bring her out in the open? See, a lot of people, when they're desperate, they do begin to call out to Jesus. But usually they're a bit embarrassed about it. I don't know how to pray. I'm not really a churchy sort of person. I've been reading a testimony that's been published just recently, somebody's book who used to be in this church, and that was her first thought coming here was, I wouldn't fit in. They wouldn't want to know me. If they knew all about me, they wouldn't want me. So there's that sense of, I'm too embarrassed. And yet he calls her out to the front, as it were. Why? Is this him being unfeeling, insensitive, or wanting to make sure everybody knows what he's just done? No, I'll tell you why. It's because of the second half of what we've been talking about, the suffering that woman's going through. Yes, the flow of blood is now dealt with. That was the easy bit for him. But there's this whole picture behind it that he wants to address as well. So she comes out in fear and trembling. It's what we've been noticing a couple of weeks back when Matt was preaching about the man with all the demons in him. And when people saw the amazing power that Jesus had over the powers of evil, whereas the people round about, a lot of them were so scared they wanted him to leave the country immediately, please. And in the passage just before that, at the end of chapter 4, we have the disciples in a storm at sea, petrified, and then Jesus calms the storm. And their immediate reaction is not to think, oh, phew, lovely. It's, who are we dealing with here? And they're terrified. And here's this woman. Her dreams have come true. She's been healed. Everything she's longed for has happened. But now she's petrified because she's being called out by the one who has done this and brought before him to face him, to tell him what's happened. Not to mention she's in front of however many hundred other people who are gathering around at the time. But you notice what Jesus says to her. Does he rebuke her? You shouldn't have been here, you know. You should have sent a private message and I could have perhaps come and stood outside your house and done something at a distance without getting unclean. Because, see, the risk was that by touching Jesus, technically, according to the law, she made him unclean. But you know what? You can't make Jesus unclean. Because to be unclean, you need to sin. And he never has. And he actually took on board all our sin, all our uncleanness, carried it himself to the cross. And it looked as if the devil had won, but God reversed the judgment and raised him from the dead, thereby declaring he is not unclean, he is not a sinner, he's not a failed rebel leader. He is the Messiah, he is my son, and he is good, pure, true, perfect, worthy to be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And you can't make him unclean, however mucky you may be when you come into his presence. And so actually what he says to her, I think it's very, very touching. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Daughter. He addressed her not as an outcast, but as a close member now of his family. Somebody who belongs. A daughter has a right to be in the house. She has a right to be in the family because she belongs to the Father. And so this woman, having come there in fear and trembling lest anybody notice her, and now in fear and trembling like, what on earth is he going to say to me? finds that actually what he says is, I love you, I care about you. And I've healed you, even though I didn't even at this point know you were coming. Because, one of the things he laid aside when he came to earth was this omniscience, where you know everything that's going on everywhere, all of the time. If you're living in a human body, that would be pretty impossible to cope with. But he was still totally in harmony and union with the one who still had all the omniscience. So all the information that was needed at any time was there available to him. And here he is saying to this woman, you are my daughter. And what's more, I'm commending you for the faith that brought you to reach out to me. Now, just one little thing we just need to get really clear here. Faith is not a magic formula for tapping into the power of God to get what you want. I remember once when I was working a summer job in an office, and at the time I was in the process of heading towards the training college. I'd just come out of university. I was going into the training college to train for the ministry. And of course, I was very excited at the time. I was talking a lot, talking to anybody who'd listen. And I remember explaining all the amazing answers to prayer I'd been seeing to some other young woman in the office. And she said to me, wow, this is amazing. She said, so what formula do you use? Could you tell me? There is no formula. It's about relationship. If you're part of the family, you don't need the formula to know how to speak to your father or how to speak to your sister. You're related. You know how to speak to them. You're in communication all the time. In fact, half the time you'll understand what they're saying without them even needing to say it, because they're family. And so when he says to her, I'm commending your faith, it's not that, faith is sort of some magic quality that some people seem to be endowed with, and other people need to know the formula of how can I work it up. Faith is when you trust someone or something because you know what they're like. She had faith in Jesus because she could see that Jesus actually was somebody you could rely on. Not because she'd found a secret way of approaching. And so actually, it's not her faith in that sense that healed her. People say things like, oh, the power of prayer. It isn't the power of prayer, it's who you're praying to. And he's the one who does the healing. It isn't the power of faith, it's who your faith is placed in that makes the difference. And we notice that in that transaction, Jesus felt the power go from him. So there's no question about where the power came from and who gets the credit for the fact that she was healed. And it's not her and her faith, and now she can go and address conferences on faith. It's actually that she has met with Jesus. And now her whole life will be totally different because it's been changed by him. And a whole new perspective has opened up, whole new possibilities have opened up, a whole new purpose has opened up, because now she's part of Jesus' family. And I'm pretty certain, we hear nothing more about her in the scriptures, but I'm pretty certain that woman went on to become one of those who were moving in the power of the Spirit as the church came into birth. So, doesn't matter what your condition is, doesn't matter what other people think of you. The key thing is, what's your relationship with Jesus? And when you're in need and desperation, he's the one you come to. And when you meet with Jesus, as she found even after she was healed, sometimes that can be scary. But the more you get to know him, the more you realize you don't need to be afraid. You can trust him no matter what happens. So yes, it's important that we have our faith in Jesus. But I want to just quote a thing that Tom Wright said, which I think is very helpful here, just to sum up what I've just been saying. Faith, though it's self-powerless, is the channel through which Jesus' power can work. Because he doesn't force us to come and receive. but he invites us to do so. And when we respond, the channel is wide open for his power to be released and our lives and situations to be changed.